Hey guys, and welcome back to EB Expo 2012. I'm Jay Capini, Mr. Randolph Ramsey, and we're joined by fighting game royalty, I think it's fair to say, Mr. Ed Boon, who is the Creative Director of NetherRealm Studios. Ed, thank you for joining us on the couch.
Thank you for having me, I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure having you down here. We're taking a look at Injustice Among Gods, your new game, and we've got a bit of a demo, so we'll walk through that at the start, and then we'll kind of chat as we go. We're also open to conversation on Twitter and on the Twitch feed, so if you've got questions as well as the live studio audience here at the show, make sure you throw your hand up. We'll get a mic over to you and you can ask a question, and hopefully it's something you can get answered.
Absolutely.
So let's set the scene as we begin the demo. What was the overarching idea for Injustice?
The goal was we really wanted to make a game that kind of celebrated the whole superhero experience, you know. And when you kind of think of superhero experiences, you think of big events. You think of, you know, it's not just two people fighting; it's two people throwing cars at each other and throwing each other through buildings and all the things that you see in the big blockbuster superhero experience. That's what we wanted to kind of let people experience in the form of a fighting game. And then the way to do that really is we needed, you know, the environment to play as big of a role in the fight as the characters that you pick, so you can pick up a car that is actually next to you, or you can throw somebody through a building into another arena, something like that. So that's really like what the core identity of this game is.
And what can you tell us about the story? Is there any sort of like hints you can tell us about how this is all taking place?
Yeah, you know, with these characters, Superman, Batman, all this, they're all involved in the Justice League, which is kind of like a collaboration of superheroes. And we're really kind of taking that whole formula and turning it upside down. So who's good is bad, who's bad is good, you're not really sure. And that's why the name Injustice is really kind of implying to, you know, you're not sure who's really a good guy.
But is there a storyline reason that, you know, like for example, Nightwing can take on Superman and, you know, actually win? Like what's the scenario there?
Yeah, well that's part of what the story explains is the actual why would these characters be fighting against each other, and as well as why would Superman not win every single fight in the match.
Now you mentioned interactivity, and that's a really big part of the demo and the game as a whole. It's something we saw a little bit of in MK vs. DC. Was that the kind of the early steps in terms of setting the groundwork for something that wasn't being done well in fighting games on the whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as interaction, like you see Superman, he just grabbed that car and slammed it on Nightwing. Nightwing before that had kind of jumped off of it, and that really kind of demonstrates how the different types of characters use the different objects in different ways. So it's not everybody doesn't slam the car. You know, right up here, you're going to see Nightwing. He's kind of jumping up here, and he can use that floating car as leverage, so he can use it as an attack move against his opponent. Whereas somebody like Superman, you know, big power character, basically all he has to do is just kind of jump up and slam the car on Nightwing as it is right there. So that's really kind of like the, again, what our main goal with this game was to distinguish it between other fighting games.
So how do you... Sorry.
I was going to say, can you tell us a little bit more about the mechanics in the game? So I'm seeing meter there, right? So like, what's the meter used for?
Yeah, the meter has a number of functions, similar to what we did with Mortal Kombat, where you can enhance your special moves. You know, Nightwing just knocked up here on this other arena, and you're going to notice him using his meter to enhance the special move. He can actually, you know, throw one of these wingdings, or he can do like an enhanced version where he throws more than 3 of them there. Or he can actually use it in this kind of like this clash sequence where the characters kind of charge each other, and you have to use your meter to determine how much energy you're going to put into this big clash.
So that's the wager system, is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of like wagering how much of your meter you want to put towards this clash.
Okay.
And then obviously, you know, using the entire meter, you kind of unleash the big crazy super move that does the most damage of all the moves.
Now you've talked about the fact that the characters that you've revealed so far really show differing aspects and abilities of play style, and the fact that you didn't want too much overlap in terms of ability and not too many characters to play similarly.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm not asking for the rest of the roster reveal here, but you know, what are the characteristics that we haven't seen yet from the announced roster?
What are the characteristics? Well, I guess, you know, each character it has their own special set of moves, you know, like they could do their various projectiles or different attacks. but they also have the ability to use the background in different ways. And then they have this this button that we're calling kind of like a special move in a button. And they have completely different functions for that. You know, Nightwing, it changes his fighting style. He goes from a staff, you know, or a Kali sticks, puts them together into a staff. No other character does that. Flash can actually slow down time. You know, so all these things are unique just to that character. But then you put them in the category of gadget and power and how they use the backgrounds. That mixture is really what makes this game kind of special.
Tell us about characters, Ed. Like in the demo that we're seeing here, we got 8 selectable characters. But like, what's your criteria for selecting characters to appear in the game?
Oh, well, our choice in terms of why we chose a character, the first criteria, I guess, would be recognizability. You know, we're not gonna not have Superman in the game or Batman, and so that kind of tier of the most recognizable characters, Flash. The second one is the story. We have a very deep, elaborate story mode, and so certain characters who have relations with each other will kind of group together and they'll play the same part in the story. But if the character doesn't have any kind of association with any of the characters, we might omit them. And then the third one is just to kind of have the more obscure ones. We really want some unexpected characters that people won't see coming, you know.
So is it, was anyone like too obscure that you were thinking about that didn't make the final cut? Or?
Yeah, you know, the DC roster of characters is literally in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And so there were some that I had to, you know, go onto Wikipedia and find out, you know, who is this guy. I learned a lot about some certain characters, and then there's some really fan favorites that people have been asking for that we might consider for DLC, like a Lobo or someone like that.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that you wanted to include but they played or had abilities that were a little too similar to someone already on the roster and you couldn't include them for that reason?
Absolutely. You know, there's a character in Flash's universe, Professor Zoom, who's basically the Flash with a yellow costume. So we didn't include him because we kind of felt like we had that speedster one filled up already like that. And so there's similar things like that with in the Batman universe as well.
So obviously in the fighting game community, like being competitive is a pretty big part of the game. Like, are you positioning Injustice to be a staple of the fighting game scene, or are you happy for it to be a bit more sort of mainstream casual?
Well, we definitely want the casual people to play it because I think a lot of people who are kind of big fans of these heroes, you know, Superman, Batman, Flash, might not necessarily be fighting game players.
Yeah.
They're going to pick up a game. We don't want to give them something that's so technical they have to spend hours learning it, or they're just going to kind of move on to the next thing. So we want the casual player to be able to do something cool right off the bat. But like we did with Mortal Kombat, you know, we have the same kind of philosophy of we wanted to add layers that the Evo guys and everybody can really embrace, and that approach with Mortal Kombat seemed to have worked.
Yeah, because Mortal Kombat is like a staple of the Evo circuit. So is that what you want for Injustice as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. We really, and then it's a tall order. You know, we're doing some pretty dramatic things to the fighting game formula with the arenas and their goals, and so, but we do want a lot of depth in the fighting.
What is that balancing act? Obviously, you want something at competitive level play that players will still learn things about over time, but you also need to make it, as you said, accessible to the people. Where is the kind of meeting point of those two philosophies?
I think that the ability to do something cool very easily is going to satisfy a lot of the kind of casual players. But then on top of that, I think you have to layer in things for like the guys who are like, you know, frame counting, you know, at this part of the combo, you can actually sneak in a special move, and then you really got to be quick and you got to be timing. The casual guys probably won't even really even dig into that area. They'll be doing just the cool big picture moves. But we're definitely going to have those kind of deeper features for the hardcore guys.
I guess I just want to sort of like ask a little bit about, obviously like Mortal Kombat, we didn't get here in Australia, which is unfortunate, but what did you guys learn, I guess, from the last Mortal Kombat and wanted to, I guess, improve on in terms of sort of like mechanics or gameplay style in Injustice?
Well, I think with every game that we do, we kind of write down what worked and what didn't work and then kind of improving on it. You know, we had one of the things that feedback from Mortal Kombat that was really big was the single player experience. I think a lot of people really appreciated the story mode that we had in the game. We had this 300 tall challenge tower, and then we had, of course, the arcade mode with the ladder and all that, and then the tag team and all that. So all of those features we really want to bring along a really strong single player experience with this game. And then things of like some of the more difficult things with online, we've really enhanced our online experience and had a lot more with doing spectator modes where a group of people are participating and kind of all actively involved in the fight. So those are the things that we really kind of learned from the last game.
I think that's a really important point you made about like getting a lot of single player content in there, because I think that's how you get the more casual player in, is by putting a lot of single player stuff in there. So like you're hoping to have like the same amount of single player content in Injustice than we saw in Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of as much fun as these fighting games, and the real core of the fighting game is playing against your friends. That's the funnest experience. There's definitely a desire for single player stuff, especially story related stuff. I think people really want it, and these characters just have such a great history of that we're really kind of with this medium being able to present it in a very sophisticated way, cinematically.
Okay. So in terms of, obviously you had an existing relationship with DC around DCMK. Were there any limitations put on your implementation of the license? And is it a case of working with known IP and someone else's in particular, that your ability to innovate within that kind of structure is slightly...
Yeah. DC was so much more of a partner in this than they were, like the law in terms of saying you can't do this. There were some big picture things. They said, you can't have Batman use a gun. You can't change the S in Superman. You can't have Superman kill anybody. All these kind of staples, which we wouldn't have, broken anyway. Outside of that, they really let us get into gave us the freedom to redesign some of the character costumes and models and the special moves that are in the game. They really let us make something free. And I think they took the same approach with Arkham City, and that helped that game become as strong as that was.
So what will fans see as the NetherRealm touch to existing characters they may have known through another medium?
If you were to ask me to kind of describe it very roughly, I think that the difference in the NetherRealm characters is we're trying to add some dimension to, like, imagine characters that just had a skin-tight costume on. We really try to kind of add dimension to it, add details, which in the form of armor and a lot of the details that weren't in the original costumes, we've kind of layered onto it.
This is just an aside, but I've just noticed that Superman's costume looks a lot like the upcoming movie costume. Like, have you guys sort of worked with the upcoming movie at all?
No, actually, one of the restrictions we had was we were told not to look like the movies, either Superman or Batman. So we were kind of shying away from those.
Okay, all right.
Now, fighting games obviously live and die by balance, and you can only do so much pre-production. Firstly, are you working closely with? You mentioned that you want it to be an Evo style game. Are you working with pro gamers to tweak and balance pre-launch, and then what are your plans for balancing and as you said, DLC for post-launch to make sure everything stays balanced?
We absolutely want to get the really hardcore guys in and let them kind of tear the game apart and figure out what loopholes and whatnot we might have in there. But we also want to make sure that that the casual guy who picks it up, how much fun are the guys who don't play fighting games going to have right off the bat?
Yep.
And balancing those games are always the biggest challenge that you have, is just making sure that Harley Quinn is some kind of a challenge with Superman. There's pluses and minuses to each character.
Now you've talked a little bit previously about breaking some of the assumption that I guess in the direct lines with the Mortal Kombat franchise, and the fact that they're two very separate franchises coming out of the same studio. How hard is it to carve out a fresh identity for two similar games from one development team?
I think within the game industry, you guys and stuff, you guys are a lot more, I think, familiar with NetherRealm and Mortal Kombat, make the association a little bit more. I think the average person off the street, doesn't have as much of an expectation or isn't as have as much experience with, NetherRealm and Mortal Kombat. So we'll probably get a lot more questions from industry people about parallels with Mortal Kombat than we do with somebody off the street who says, oh, a game with Superman and Batman in it, cool. It's more of a question of what they have as opposed to expecting something.
But I guess by the same token, you also get the goodwill that comes with a well-seasoned pedigree like the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Yeah.
It's not like this is your first rodeo.
Yeah, and in our title, it says from the creators of Mortal Kombat. We're hoping that does that, but it doesn't make expectations of, creators of Mortal Kombat, how do I cut Batman's head off? We're not going to do that.
Hey, Ed, I want to ask you a question about online. I've read some sort of previous interviews you've had where you're trying to do something quite innovative with online updates, that you wanted to essentially be a seamless experience where players don't have to actually download anything, it just happens in the background. And plus it also allows them to be able to play DLC characters that they may not actually have bought themselves. Can you talk a little bit more about how online will work for you guys?
Yeah, one of the things that Mortal Kombat did, we're one of the first ones to do it, was to actually have a real character that you would download, get onto your machine, and then you could play against other people. The one area where I think we stumbled was some people who didn't download it didn't necessarily have that data, and then that caused problems with getting online. And so with this game, we really want to basically push the information to everybody so we're all at an even parity. If you bought the character, then you can use it, but it's not going to be on the disc. We're going to push it on with the online stuff. And we're hoping that that's going to keep everybody compatible, and we won't have those same kind of desync issues that were some of the Mortal Kombat players who didn't have the DLC content.
We'll take a question from the Twitch feed, and Keyblade Yoshi wants to know how many villains and heroes are going to be in the final game.
Our goal is we have 50% villains and 50% heroes. So the character count we haven't released yet, but I can tell you it's in the 20s.
Yeah, fantastic. Do we want to throw it out to the live audience? Does anyone have a question?
A question from the live audience?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
Yeah. One up there.
There's one here.
Hi Ed, how you doing? Hey, I'm just wondering, making a DC game, does that make you really want to make another Mortal Kombat game anytime soon? At all, maybe?
What was the question?
He just wants to know that making a DC game, does it make you want to make another Mortal Kombat game?
I don't think making a DC game makes us want to make a Mortal Kombat game, but we got such a good response to the last Mortal Kombat game that that probably is the biggest attraction to doing another one. We haven't made any announcements, but I'd be surprised if that was the last one we ever made.
Just going on that, like what sort of genres would you want to work in the future, like outside of the fighting game genre? We kind of dabbled in action adventure games with the Shaolin Monks game. It was kind of like a co-op action adventure game, and so that was always fun. We'd love to kind of see how going further in that direction as well. I don't know if we're going to do anything as kind of radically different as like a war shooter or a driving game or something like that. But we're going to do an RTS anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about games these days is when you have a studio do something successful, it usually takes a lot of years to get to that level. Yeah. And so to kind of change gears to something drastically different is usually a tough thing to do. But we definitely would love to expand into different things like action.
I just want to get your take too on just generally what the fighting game audience, like obviously there was that big lull in the sort of late 90s and 2000s where there wasn't very many fighting games coming out, and now there seems to be a lot more. So do you think that we can keep this resurgence going, or have we peaked with fighting games now?
I certainly hope so. I think there was a bit of a perfect storm of games. Street Fighter 4 was probably the one that really hit in that direction, followed by Mortal Kombat and Marvel vs. Capcom, and I think those three games to me really helped that kind of wave or return, and hopefully we see sequels to all those games to continue that on.
And I think there's a question from the audience as well.
So Alex, Alex down the front just wants to know how hard it is for you to continuously top what you do with each iteration of every game that you make. So like, how do you improve on the last game? Like, how do you make yourself do that?
I guess when we set out to do a new game, we always try to like answer the question, what is it about this game that's going to be different than the last ones, as opposed to just kind of skinning it with prettier graphics and offering the same game. And so we've had to make some pretty dramatic decisions. You know, the last Mortal Kombat game, we went from 3D to 2D. We brought back the fatalities. You know, we retold the story of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3. So we made some pretty big dramatic decisions. And I think, you know, if we were to do another Mortal Kombat game, we'd have to do something as dramatic like that. So it's just embracing change, I guess.
Has DC given you any license with its license in terms of you obviously have the confines of the existing universe to adhere to, but are they letting you feed back canon into their universe?
Well, they're allowing us to write our own story, and really, but our story is pretty consistent with the history of these characters and all of the backstory that they had. But the story that we wrote is a brand new story. It's you know, the guys in our story writing team wrote it. We worked in conjunction with these two writers, Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, and they helped us kind of, you know, stay within stay consistent with how those characters would behave.
I think we have a question from the audience as well.
First of all, you're like a hero to me, so thank you for existing. But further on the story, if you've ever read a Batman comic before, you know it's like super grisly and super gritty. Was this the approach that you took? Were you just going to try and make it as gritty as previous DC storylines, or just take a completely different approach?
I didn't fully hear
sorry,
that.
I didn't hear that question either. Sorry, can you
Tell me what
rephrase
you
it,
want
please?
to ask. Sorry. He wants to know whether you were going to take a really gritty approach as the original DC storyline, or were you going to take a completely new approach to this, I think, right? To Injustice, right?
Well, Batman certainly plays a big role in our story, and he is, God, I don't know how to say it without giving away too much of the story. He is represented in multiple ways in this game, and there's certainly a gritty incarnation and presentation of Batman. So, but there's a lot of unexpected behavior for Batman too. So that's, again, taking the word injustice. You know, how you want to interpret that, you can extrapolate some out of that.
So are you a Batman guy, Ed?
Pardon?
Are you a Batman fan yourself?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
he your favorite? Yeah.
Well, The Flash is my favorite, but I'm a big Batman fan.
Okay. All right.
We've got a couple of more questions from the live chat. Factor R wants to know whether Injustice is going to be playable at the New York Comic Con.
Absolutely, and I believe we are announcing a character there too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, Factor R wants to know if Injustice. Oh, sorry. Is Raider 15 wants to know if Jason Todd Red Hood is going to be in the game.
Say that again?
If Jason Todd Red Hood is going to be in the game.
Oh, Jason Todd Red Hood. Unfortunately, I can't really confirm or deny characters. We've got this kind of like whole campaign of rolling them out, but there is. I can tell you that there are a number of the voice actors that are in our game are the authentic ones from the animated series or other incarnations of the characters.
I think we have one more for the audience. Yeah.
So Scott down here wants to know if you listened to any fan feedback when you were making Injustice, and if so,
Sorry, I can't hear a word.
Fan feedback from how much do you listen to fan feedback?
Oh, we've listened to a lot of fan feedback. We absolutely, a number of us have Twitter accounts. We read the forums, and we're constantly just getting people's reactions to things, and that influences our stuff a lot.
How do you balance it when, how do you balance things that are constructive versus people just being jerks? How do you recognize that?
You know, after 20 years, you can get an idea of when somebody is just ranting for the sake of ranting versus having a constructive point.
Yeah.
If you see patterns, if you see a lot of people complaining about the same thing, the chances that they're all wrong is probably pretty slim. But by now we've pretty much developed the skill of being able to tell when somebody's just in a crabby mood.
Reaper wants to know, will there be finishes similar to Brutalities from MK vs. DC?
No, actually, and that's one of the things that when people hear it's the Mortal Kombat team, that's the first question they ask is there fatalities? First of all, the characters don't kill, so we're not going to do that. But second of all, is we really don't want to just kind of skin Mortal Kombat with DC characters and have that game. So we've made a number of changes to the fighting mechanic, to the rules and the template of the fighting game that we just want to keep the identity of this game, or establish the identity of this game.
Is that a case of you know what you've done previously, you put that in one box, and then you say, let's do the opposite of Mortal Kombat so that this has its own identity?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Sorry, a question? There was another question from Money D Dragon, actually. Will there be any Asian superheroes?
Will there be any what?
Asian superheroes.
Asian superheroes? Again, if I said yes or no, I'd be revealing something. So roster questions are the toughest ones to answer.
That's all right. I think they just want to try. Do we have any more questions from the live audience?
Any more from the live audience at all?
There's one down the front here.
There's one more here, yep. So is this grid indicative of what we'll see in the final game in terms of character count?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, if we have DLC, it's going to change.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, Laura. Yep.
So Alex is studying game development, and he just wants to know if you have any advice for upcoming game developers on what they can do.
I guess it's interesting when we made video games in 1992. It was a completely different animal. You were either a programmer, an artist, or a sound guy, and that was it. Now there's all these other disciplines. I would say pick a discipline that you can really excel at, and there's so many to choose from. Animation, 3D modeling, character design, storytelling, programming, gameplay design, UI. So there's so many different kind of disciplines that you can get good at. Get in the door with that, and then if your kind of desire is to lead a team, then it's kind of just get involved in other disciplines and try to expand your knowledge of it. So.
Now, Ed, we can't let you go without asking the obligatory R18 question, unfortunately. The obligatory R18 question for Australians. And with the R18 policy coming into play next year, obviously it won't impact Injustice as much as a Mortal Kombat style game that's quite gory. But tell us a little bit about the process of working with the Australian classification.
I actually have never have. I've heard everything kind of peripherally, and my understanding is that that the once this rating is established, then there's a chance for Mortal Kombat to be played. We really just want to be able to get Mortal Kombat in the hands of anybody who wants to play it, who is old enough to play it. And so other than that, I don't have really a lot of knowledge on the Australian side.
Perfect. Should we do one last question from the audience if it's out there? One down the front here, Lars.
Down the front.
Between the characters that have superpowers and the ones that don't really have that many superpowers. It's like Superman versus Batman, for example.
Oh, sure. Well, I guess the characters that don't have superpowers, they obviously have things that they can do to help. Batman, for instance, he has batarangs, he has his grappling hook, he has all these bombs that he can throw. So there's a number of features that we can give characters that to kind of balance things out. What's great about these characters is their abilities are such a wide range of them that we can give them very unpredictable moves. And just because somebody is as powerful as Superman doesn't mean that we can't give someone like a Harley Quinn or a Nightwing something that can counter one of his moves. It's just like any other fighting game character, Raiden versus Scorpion or something like that.
Last question for you quickly, Ed. We talked about the EVO scene, the fact that you want this to be a big competitive fighting game. Are you actually putting any tools in place? So, for example, Call of Duty Black Ops is adding its own codcasting mode where you can stream the experience directly from within the game. Is there any talk about adding tools within Injustice to facilitate players to be able to share their experience through the game?
Not currently, and certainly not anything we're ready to announce, but I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
One to watch. Ed, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you
Thanks
for all the live
Appreciate it.
questions and on the chat. Put your hands together for Mr. Ed Boon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.